Good afternoon, everyone. So today we are again going to have another session by Dr. Ashwati Vinod, Assistant Professor, Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, KMCT Dental College. Ma'am, today we'll be dealing with the anatomy of facial nerve and trigeminal nerve. Ma'am, before starting the session, we'll have a prayer. So I'd like to call Ms. Ritika Kapoor to deliver the prayer.
ॐ नमामि धन्वन्तरि आदिदेवं सरासुरे वन्दितं पादपादनं लोके जरारुके भया मृत्युनाशं दतारिशं विविध औषधीनां धन्वन्त्री प्रमानाथं सर्वरोगे निवारितम् आयुर्वेद प्रवक्तारं वन्दे पीयूषं धायकम् सर्वे जना सुखिनो भवन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामया ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ
Thank you, Ms. Ritika. So the platform is all yours, ma'am. You can continue.
Thank you. Am I audible to you all?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible.
Good afternoon, all. So today we'll be dealing with the anatomy of facial nerve and trigeminal nerve. Just a second. So as all of us know that facial nerve, that the seventh cranial nerve, are all other cranial nerves discussed with? Have you all gone through the other cranial nerves or have any teacher taken cranial nerves for you all?
Actually, it has to be dealt. So,
Pardon, I can't hear you.
cranial nerves are not yet dealt.
Okay. So I'll be dealing with two cranial nerves, that is facial nerve and the trigeminal nerve. So facial nerve, that's the seventh cranial nerve. And it's a nerve of the second brachial arch. You know that we have brachial arches and all these nerves are being derived from these brachial arches. Each brachial arch gives out into the each nerve. So when we are concerned about this facial nerve, the seventh cranial nerve, that's the nerve of the seventh brachial arch. So what are the functional components of the facial nerve? So facial nerve, from the term itself, you can understand that it deals with the sensory and motor responses of the face. Okay, the muscular response, the pain response, all that are controlled by the facial nerve. So the functional components include special visceral or brachial efferent and the general visceral efferent are the functional components of the facial nerve. So special visceral or the brachial efferent are the responsible for the muscles of facial expression and for the elevation of the hyoid bone. Rather, all the muscles are interrelated to each other. There's a point of origin and insertion, and these functional components helps the muscles to function. Like there are several muscles in the face, and all these muscles are innervated by each nerve, and each nerve is responsible for every function these muscles exhibit. Okay. General visceral efferent or parasympathetic. These fibers are secretomotor to the submandibular and sublingual salivary glands, lacrimal gland, okay, submandibular and sublingual glands. These are the salivary glands. Other than that, we have one more gland, that is the parotid. Okay, these are the three major salivary glands, that is sublingual, submandibular, and the parotid. In addition to that, you have your lacrimal gland, gland of the nose, palate, and pharynx. All these secretions, the secretions all these glands secrete are being controlled by the general visceral efferent or the parasympathetic activity of the functional components of the facial nerve. Is this clear? Is this clear, Ritika? Is the concept clear? Ritika?
Ritika, you can unmute and give a response.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next one is the general visceral afferent. What does these fibers do? They carry the afferent impulses from the above mentioned glands. The above mentioned glands were the submandibular, sublingual, lacrimal, and the minor salivary, the minor glands at the nose, pharynx, and at the palate. These afferent impulses from the above mentioned glands are carried by the general visceral afferent fibers. Next one is the special visceral afferent fibers. They carry the taste sensation, facial nerve that has a branch, chorda tympani branch, and that supplies to the tongue. The taste sensation to the tongue are sensed by the special visceral afferent fibers. They carry the taste sensation from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, except the valate papilla and the palate. So, chorda tympani, that's a nerve coming from the coming from the facial nerve. Okay, they help us to sense the taste in the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. Two exceptions are the valate papillae and the palate. They are not supplied by the chorda tympani. Next one is general somatic afferent. They innervate a part of the skin of the ear. Okay, the general somatic afferent, that the skin is innervated by, again by a functional component of the facial nerve. Next one, you have the nuclei. They are situated in the lower pons. Okay, so basic thing to understand is all these arise from the pons area. In and around the pons area, you have the nuclei, and from each nuclei, each branch, whether that may be motor or secretory or a sensory one, that arise from each of this, and these are being supplied to the face and associated structures. So the nuclei are the fibers of the nerve arise from 4 nuclei situated in the lower pons. Motor nucleus or brachiomotor, you have the superior salivatory nucleus, that is again parasympathetic. Lacrimatory nucleus, that is it is also parasympathetic. Lacrimatory nucleus. Next one is nucleus of fructus solitaris, which is gustatory and also receives afferent fibers from the gland. Cause and relationships. For this, you need to keep in mind the diagram of the facial nerve. Okay, keep this diagram in mind. This is the diagram of a facial nerve. So facial nerve is attached to the brainstem by 2 roots. You have motor root and the sensory root. Sensory root is otherwise called as nervus intermedius. The 2 roots of the facial nerve are attached to the lateral part of lower border of the pons, just medial to the 8th cranial nerve. Okay, it is attached to the 8th cranial nerve, and all these are encapsulated together and they run as a single unit. Okay, the 2 roots, the sensory and the motor root, are attached to the lateral part of the lower border of the pons, that is in the brain, and it is placed medial to the 8th cranial nerve. Okay, and these 2 roots run laterally and forward along with the 8th nerve to reach the internal aquatic meatus. In the meatus, the motor root lies in a groove on the 8th nerve with the sensory root intervening. Here the 7th and 8th nerves are accompanied by the labyrinthine vessels. All these are encapsulated in a single sheath. Okay, it's encapsulated in a single sheath. All these travel together to a particular point, and only from that particular point they divide. Okay, this is how it arises from the pons, and this is how the root is being carried downwards. You can see the motor and sensory root. Both of this motor and sensory root join together to form a single trunk, and from here again it divides. One branch goes to greater petrosal, and then next one into nerve to trapezius. Then second part, what happens? 3 branches, that is posterior auricular, digastric branch, and the nerve to styloid. These 3 come under one unit, and again after exiting from the that is over the parotid gland. Over the parotid gland, that is the terminal branches. Again, you have the 5 terminal branches that is being shown like this. The 5 terminal branches of the facial nerve are being shown that exit from the over the parotid. Sorry, after it enters it comes out of the stylomastoid foramen. The facial nerve comes out of the stylomastoid foramen. It again gives three branches, that is posterior auricular. As the nerve term indicates, posterior auricular means to the ear, the nerve to digastric, and then the nerve to styloid. After giving those three branches, what happens is, over the parotid, you can see the five terminal branches of the facial nerve that is being shown here. You can see the five terminal branches of the facial nerve. Here, students,
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
have any doubt in between, please ask me, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So here you can see that the facial nerve is divided into three parts. Okay, by two bends, it is divided into three parts. So how do you divide them? At the bottom of fundus, the two roots, sensory and the motor, fuse to form a single trunk which lies in the petrous temporal bone. That is, the motor and sensory root fuse together. This area is near the petrous temporal bone. Within the canal, now this needs a lot of imagination. You need to follow the nerve through by keeping your textbook and a skull side by side. Okay, you need to by heart few things, you need to trace few things, and this diagram should be kept in front. Then only you will understand what is the course of this nerve and how it is going, and how does it supply as throughout its path, how does it supply each part. To make that clear, you need your textbook, diagram and skull side by side. Then only this will be clear to you all. So it divides. You have two parts, that is sensory, two roots, sensory and motor. They fuse to form a single trunk, and that part, that portion is which lies on the petrous temporal bone. From there, it enters into the canal. Within the canal, the course of the nerve can be divided into three parts by two bends. Okay, the nerve bends by itself, and it divides into three parts. The first part is directed laterally above the vestibule. Second part runs backward in relation to the medial wall of media above the promontory. Okay. Next, you have a third part which is again directed downward behind the promontory. The first bend is at the junction of the first and second bend. The first bend at the junction of the first and second is sharp, and it lies over the anterosuperior part of the promontory and is called as genu. The second bend is gradual. You have a sharp bend at the anterior portion, and then the second bend is gradual. It lies between the promontory and the adductus to the mastoid antrum. So this lies between your mastoid antrum. That is mastoid antrum. You can feel it immediately below your ear. Okay, immediately below you can feel that, and you have the stylomastoid foramen there, and your facial nerve exits the skull through the stylomastoid foramen. The facial nerve leaves the skull by passing through the stylomastoid foramen in its extracranial course. So it has an intracranial course and an extracranial course. Till now we are talking about the intracranial course. Now we are telling about the extracranial course. As it exits from the stylomastoid foramen, the facial nerve crosses the lateral base of the styloid process. Here you can see a pointed portion. Take your skull, if you see your skull, you can see a pointed portion that is called as the styloid process. It enters the postromedial surface of the parotid gland. Here you have the parotid gland. So it enters the postromedial surface of the parotid gland. There it divides in five terminal branches which emerge along the anterior border of the parotid gland. There the facial nerve splits into exactly. You can place your hand over the parotid gland, and each portion, each nerve, this division supply each part of your face. Okay. Branches and distribution. Within the canal divides into greater petrosal nerve, the nerve to stapedius, and the chorda tympani. Just a second, I'll just check the figure. See here, this is the intracranial course. It comes out through the internal acoustic meatus. Here you have the genu. Here you have the greater petrosal. Then chorda tympani is coming this side. This is chorda tympani. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So those are the divisions. how the facial nerve is coming out. So within the facial canal, it gives branches to the greater petrosal, nerve to stapedius and cauda tympani. We have greater petrosal, the nerve to stapedius that supplies the inner ear, and then you have cauda tympani. Cauda tympani supplies the anterior two-third of the tongue. The taste sensation to the anterior two-third of the tongue is given by the cauda tympani. Now, as it comes out, now that is within the facial canal, and as it comes out through the stylomastoid foramen, you have three branches again. That is posterior auricula. Posterior auricula means behind the auricle. Okay, posterior auricula part, digastric muscle, and the stylohyoid are supplied. Stylomastoid nerve. Stylohyoid nerve. Okay, that is immediately after it exits from the stylomastoid foramen. Then you have the in the posteromedial part, as we discussed, you have the entry of the facial nerve over the posteromedial part of the parotid. There it divides into 5 terminal branches. They are called as temporal, zygomatic, buccal branch, marginal mandibular, and the cervical. If you place your hand like this, you get the temporal branch, then the zygomatic branch, buccal, marginal mandibular, and the cervical branch. Okay, you get the temporal branch, that is to the temporal region, zygomatic over the zygomatic arch, buccal, you have the upper buccal and the lower buccal, you have the buccal branch, then the marginal mandibular, this is the border of the mandible, and you have the marginal mandibular going over there, and then you have the cervical portion that is to the neck. Okay, these are the terminal branches that the facial nerve gives finally. Communicating branches with adjacent cranial and spinal nerves that will go in and around. There will be communications between each and every inter-branching, and also between the cranial nerves also there will be connections. So going into the greater petrosal nerve. Greater petrosal nerve carries gustatory and parasympathetic fibers arising from the geniculate ganglion of the facial nerve. Few things need to be by hearted. Okay, all these names, I want you all to mug up all these names. Then only you will understand and you will be able to correlate it with the applied anatomy. Nerve to stapedius, remember the name, nerve to stapedius, that has been given into the, it arises opposite to the pyramid of middle ear and supplies the stapedius muscle. What is the role of stapedius muscle? Stapedius muscle helps us in modulating the voice we hear. If there's any injury to the facial nerve or this particular point where the facial nerve supplies to stapedius, there will be difficulty in hearing, or the patient hears a normal sound louder than it is. Okay, so injury to the facial nerve at that particular point, whether from this within the canal or in some area near to the stapedius muscle, then you will get all these defects. Yeah, the muscle dampens excessive vibration of stakes caused by high-pitched sounds. In paralysis of the muscle, even high-pitched sounds appear too loud. That is called as hyperacusis. That is what we discuss now. Next, going to the cauda tympani. Cauda tympani, it arises in the vertical part of facial nerve about 6 cm above the stylomastoid foramen. It carries preganglionic secretomotor fibers to the submandibular and sublingual salivary gland, and it also supplies the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. Then going into the posterior auricular nerve, as the name indicates, behind the auricle, arises just below the stylomastoid foramen. Stylomastoid foramen, that's an area where the facial nerve stops its intracranial course and comes out of the cranium. That is the area stylomastoid foramen is where the facial nerve exits from the cranium. It ascends between the mastoid process and external acoustic meatus and supplies the auricular, the posterior region of auricle, occipitalis muscle, intrinsic muscle on the back of the auricle. Okay, it ascends between the mastoid process and the external acoustic meatus, and it supplies the posterior auricular area, occipitalis, that is behind, and intrinsic muscles in the back of the auricle. These areas are supplied by the posterior auricular nerve. Again, the digastric branch, it is very short, as shown in the diagram, it is very short, and it supplies the posterior belly of digastric. Stylohyoid branch, it may arise within the digastric branch, it's long, and it supplies the stylohyoid muscle. Then you have the temporal branches, crosses the zygomatic arch and supplies the auricularis anterior. All these are muscles which are innervated by the facial nerve. You have so many muscles in the face associated with the face, auricle, etc. All these muscles are innervated by one or the other branch of the facial nerve. Okay, that is why this topic becomes important. So what is the temporal branch? That is the branch seen over the parotid. One branch is temporal branch. They cross the zygomatic arch and supplies the auricularis anterior, auricularis superior, intrinsic muscles lateral side of ear, intrinsic muscles seen on the lateral side of ear, frontalis, orbicularis oculi, corrugator supercilium. All these muscles are supplied by the temporal branches. Okay. Zygomatic branch runs across the zygomatic bone. You have the zygomatic arch here, and you have the zygomatic branch of facial bone. Sorry, facial nerve crossing across the zygomatic bone, and it supplies orbicularis oculi. Orbicularis oculi are muscles seen around the eyes. You have orbicularis oculi. Oculi means related to eye, that is seen in circular shape. Okay, orbicularis oculi. Again, you have another set of muscles, orbicularis oris, that is seen around the mouth. Okay, this is again supplied by the buccal branch of the facial nerve. Now, buccal branches, there are two in number. I told you it is divided into upper buccal and lower buccal. Upper buccal branch runs above the parotid duct and lower buccal below the parotid duct. And this parotid duct opens in front of your second molar, upper second molar tooth. Is it clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So here, have a look at this figure. Sorry. Here you have the nucleus here. You have the superior salivatory nucleus, nucleus of Tractus solitaris. All nucleuses are here, and you have the internal aqueous meatus here. Till the internal aqueous meatus, they combine together and come as a group. And from the internal aqueous meatus, they divide. You can see the branches. You can see the greater petrosal here. This greater petrosal, this is the pterygopalatine ganglion. Okay, this is the pterygopalatine ganglion. You have three ganglions associated with the facial nerve. One is pterygopalatine ganglion, next is otic ganglion, and next one is submandibular ganglion. This what happens, greater petrosal nerve goes like this. From here, it gets its fibers from the pterygopalatine ganglion. Here there is a relay here. From here again, the secretory fibers to the lacrimal gland is being given by the lacrimal nerve. Here again you have the zygomaticofacial nerve. Okay. From here again another branch, that is nerve to stapedius is also there. Then chorda tympani. Chorda tympani, it carries sensory fibers to the anterior two-third of the tongue. Here you have another branch also. The lingual nerve is also here. That is again another branch of facial nerve, another part of the facial nerve. Here it again relays in the submandibular ganglion, and the secretomotor fibers of submandibular ganglion are also being carried out here. Again from the submandibular ganglion, the part is being transferred into the sublingual ganglion. Okay, the postganglionic secretomotor fibers, the sublingual gland, are also being seen here. Again, you can see here you have the nerve to stapedius that goes into the mid-ear. Okay. The muscles in and around the mid-ear are supplied by the nerve to stapedius. Here you have the stylomastoid foramen. The stylomastoid foramen, from here downwards, you have the extracranial course of the facial nerve. Is the figure clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
We discussed already. You have the temporal branch. You have the temporal branch, zygomatic branch, then upper buccal, lower buccal, that is commonly called as buccal branch. Then you have the marginal mandibular and the cervical. Marginal mandibular branch, it runs below the angle of the mandible. Here, this defined portion seen, this is called as the angle of the mandible, below the angle of the mandible, and it supplies the muscles of the lower lip and chin. Cervical branch, that is supplied to the neck. Here it emerges from the apex of the parotid gland and runs downward and forward to supply the platysma muscle. Okay, these are the terminal branches of the facial nerve. Communicating branches. For effective coordination between the movements of the muscle of the first, second, and third brachial branches, motor nerves of three arches communicate with each other. I told you, facial nerve is the branch of second brachial arch. Same way you have first, second, third. You have all your brachial arches, and this first, second, and third brachial arches, the muscle derived. The movements of the muscles of the first, second, and third brachial arches The motor nerves of these three arches, the muscles derived from first, second, and third arches, communicate to the motor nerves of the nerves emerging from these three brachial arches, and they communicate with each other for better coordination. The facial nerve also communicates with the sensory nerve distributed over its motor territory. So the ganglia associated, I already showed you in the figure. Geniculate ganglion, submandibular ganglion, and the pterygopalatine ganglion. These are the ganglions associated with the facial nerve. Coming back to the figure, what is the importance of facial nerve, or what is the need to learn the course, and how important the facial nerve is with the diagnosis part? Okay, so you can see here, this is the course of facial nerve. You have a part of the facial nerve with the intracranial course and another part going through the extracranial course. What happens is, injury in any particular point, let it be trauma, let it be congenital, whatever it is, injury to any point of the facial nerve, at which particular point, that affects your diagnosis. Okay, suppose if you are doing some surgery, let's talk about the terminal branches. Suppose if you are doing some surgery of the parotid gland. Okay, excuse me 1 second. Please excuse me, just a second.
Yeah, ma'am, sure.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, ma'am,
So
you
let's
can
continue.
continue.
Okay, thank you. When there's injury to particular point, so we are talking about the terminal branches. So let's talk about the terminal branches of the facial nerve. That is temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and cervical. These are the terminal branches of the facial nerve. For better understanding, I'll tell you, if there's any injury, we are doing some surgery of the parotid gland. For example, some tumor of the parotid gland. We want to excise the parotid gland. I told you that over the parotid gland, if this is the parotid gland, all these branches are seen over this parotid gland. So any injury to this nerve, okay, while trying to remove this parotid gland, any injury to this facial nerve affects all the parts supplied by whichever branch is affected. Suppose if it's the upper buccal branch, okay, we are trying to remove the parotid gland and accidentally injury to the upper buccal branch of the facial nerve. What happens is that the area supplied by the upper buccal branch stops functioning. Okay, how do you diagnose that? How do you understand there is injury to the face during the surgery? You will not be able to understand that there is marked injury of the buccal branch. But immediately after the surgery, in the post-surgical ICU, what happens is when you try for the test to rule out injury during surgery, you will come across patient will report with difficulty in holding water, difficulty in blowing, etc., which is an indicator of injury to the buccal branch. Okay, suppose the whole terminal branches, that is from the trunk, okay, all 5 from the trunk, suppose injury occurs at the trunk of this terminal branches, what happens? The half part of their face will not function. I'm sorry, the motor functions of half of your face will not be working. What will happen? You will not be able to, these wrinkles seen on the forehead, when you frown your head, you can see the wrinkles. These wrinkles won't be there. You will not be able to close your eyes. You will not be able to smile. That is one part what will be happening. It will be moving to one particular side. Okay, you will not be able to close your eyes. You will be keeping your eyes open. This is in relation to injury to the terminal branches of the facial nerve. Likewise, whichever portion of the facial nerve is affected, that particular area supplied by the nerve will be affected. The motor supply of that particular point will be compromised. Clear? Is the concept clear?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
So next we are going into the applied anatomy. Do you want me to repeat any of the topics we covered, that is the branches, supplies, intracranial close, extracranial close? In this facial nerve, I'll say that 40% of the things need to be marked up. Okay? There are limitations for an undergraduate student to understand the functional components, the nucleus, etc. I think all of you are first year students. All of you are first year students, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So there are some limitations for you. Maybe by your third year, fourth year, this concept will be clear. But at this point of time, it will be difficult for you to understand the functional components, nucleus, etc. Okay. So half of the things need to be marked up. At least is the concept clear? Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
So going into the applied anatomy, you have the facial nerve paralysis. So facial nerve paralysis is, as the name indicates, paralysis of the facial nerve. So obviously the motor functions of that particular area will not be functioning. Facial nerve paralysis is a common problem that involves paralysis of any structure innervated by the facial nerve. Pathway of the facial nerve is long, convoluted, and so there are a number of causes that result in facial paralysis. That is what I told you. In whichever point your nerve gets injured, either if it is at some terminal branch, maybe only that particular area gets affected, or if it is at a trunk area, the whole part supplied from that point gets affected. Okay, the pathway of the facial nerve is long. It starts from the pons, lower border of the pons, and it ends in the terminal branches, ends in the face. Okay, so it's so convoluted and long. So there are number of causes that result in the facial paralysis. And at any point, if there is injury to the nerve to stapedius, it affects your hearing capability. Okay, if there is injury to the buccal branch, it affects the oral, that is the muscles around the oral cavity gets affected. So whichever part is affected, your result, your diagnosis depends upon which part of the nerve is affected. So facial nerve paralysis is classified with supranuclear lesion and infranuclear lesion. So you have a classification, House-Bachmann scale for the comparing. That is, you have grades of paralysis and you can compare these grades like grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. That is according to the appearance, how the patient looks, forehead, whether it is more normal. That is, if the temporal part is affected. Okay, a part of the zygomatic branch is affected, then your frowning, all that gets affected. Then your closure of the eyes. Okay, you will not be able to close your eyes if you have paralysis of the facial nerve at its terminal point. Mouth, whether it's normal. All this is being guided by the House-Bachmann scale. So grade 1, appearance of the patient will be normal, forehead will be normal, eyes normal, mouth normal. That is grade 1. We all belong to grade 1 category. Okay. Grade 2, appearance wise, there will be slight weakness in the normal resting tone. Forehead, there will be moderate to good movement. Eyes, there will be complete closure with minimal effort. You can come to grade 4. Just have a look at grade 4 eye. You have incomplete closure, which means that your eye remains open. Patient will not be able to close his eyes. That remains open for a long time. What happens when the patient keeps his eyes open for a long time? What is the requirement for the patient to close your eyes? You have your lacrimal gland functioning there. The glands around, they keep your eyes moist. Okay, so a small amount of dust particles, other infectious material coming into the eyes are being immediately washed out by this procedure. You blink your eyes and the lacrimal gland, the microbial properties of the lacrimal gland helps to eliminate all this to a certain extent. All this will be compromised and there will be dryness of the eyes, which again causes injury to the cornea and pupils. Okay. Same way, come to 5. You have minimal movement of asymmetric resting tone. There is, you can appreciate when you compare your right and left side, you will be able to appreciate the side which is abnormal. So this has been there. The injury to the facial nerve is being assessed by this Hausbrack and scale. Next one is Bell's palsy. All of us know what's Bell's palsy. It is defined as the idiopathic paresis or paralysis of the facial nerve of sudden onset. It was named after the person who found that is Sir Charles Bell in 1821, who demonstrated the separation of motor and sensory innervation of the face. Etiology of Bell's palsy, I think this comes as a short note for us. I don't know how it is for you. Okay, it's important anyway. Etiology, it is idiopathic. It can be as a result of autoimmune response, viral hypothesis, ischemic hypothesis. The factors that produce this vasospasm are maybe cold, anoxia, injury, toxicity, or maybe due to any allergic response. You can see the affected side. Here you have only unilateral involvement, one side is involved. Patient finds it difficult to smile, close the eyes or raise the eyebrow. Whistling is impossible, that is because the area supplied by the orbicularis oris is, the motor supplied to the orbicularis oris is not there. Then you can see drooping of corner of the mouth and inability to close the eyelid. That's called as Bell sign. Then you find there won't be wrinkles on the forehead, blinking reflex, that is we blink our eyes unknowingly. That's a reflex which happens like that. We don't count our blinks or we are not aware of how many times we blink our eyes. But in this patient, this reflex will be absent. Then as there is drooping of corner of the mouth, the patient finds it difficult and patient has slurred speech, and overall appearance of the patient will be like a mask-like appearance. As it is the facial nerve involvement, we have chorda tympani there. So the anterior two-third of the part, you will have loss and alteration in the taste sensation. Here you have a comparison. What is the difference between facial palsy and Bell's palsy? Facial palsy is maybe due to some infection, trauma, tumor, etc. Bell's palsy, it may develop suddenly, the cause will be mostly idiopathic. Facial palsy, it's permanent, it lasts for years of your life. It will remain as a permanent damage. Okay, facial nerve is permanently damaged. Here, Bell's palsy, it's temporary. In 90% of the cases, it will be revived. Facial palsy needs surgical treatment. Bell's palsy without treatment or regains the face regains its property. Site of affection depends upon whether it is in facial palsy, whether it is upper motor neuron or the lower motor neuron which is affected. It depends which part. Then Bell's palsy is mainly due to lower motor neuron lesion. Half side of the face is totally affected. Okay, these are the difference between facial palsy and Bell's palsy. Next one is Ramsay-Hunt syndrome type 2. It's noticed by James Ramsay-Hunt in 1907. It's caused by varicella zoster, virus responsible for chickenpox also. Infection along the facial nerve near the inner ear. That is, inner ear is involved because the facial nerve has the part supplying the stapedius. So your inner ear is also infected by the facial nerve. Syndrome occurs when the geniculate ganglion is involved due to reactivation of the virus. Classical triads of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome includes ipsilateral facial paralysis, ear pain, hearing loss, vesicles in the pinna. You can see vesicles here. Have a look at the figure. You can see vesicles in and around the pinna. Sensation of spinning and tinnitus. That is, you can always feel when you are sitting simply, you can always feel a noise, the perception of noise or ringing response in the sound, that ears. That is called as tinnitus. See, you can see the vesicular rash on the external ear. You have loss of sensation, taste sensation because your chorda tympani is involved. Here, intraorally also you can see the lesions here. See, intraorally in the anterior two-third also you can see over the palate also that particular area is affected. And you can see, if you see the face, you can understand that patient doesn't have one part is not responding. These are the signs of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome that is caused due to virus. Merkel-Rosenthal syndrome, it's also called as orofacial granulomatosis. It's an idiopathic neurological disorder, non-tender, persistent swelling on one or both the lips, results in facial paralysis, lingua plicata. That is another feature that is of fissured tongue. You can see lingua plicata. Okay, this fissuring of this tongue is called as lingua plicata. Patient is not able to close his eyes. You can see the drooling of lip to one side. Okay. Acute and chronic otitis media. Otitis media is an infection of middle ear which can spread to facial nerve and inflame it, and it causes compression of the nerve in its canal. Okay, again, acute means the patient will immediately come to a doctor. When it becomes to chronic otitis media, the patient keeps waiting, do some treatment whichever is possible for him, and then wait until it reaches a state which is incurable. Okay. Congenital facial palsy. Have a look at this child. A newborn child. This patient is having congenital facial nerve palsy, Mobius syndrome. Facial nerve is absent or it may be smaller. Congenital extraocular muscles and facial palsy was described by Mobius. It's a rare neurological disorder. Paralysis of 7 and 6. You have a mask-like face, expressionless, unable to close the eyes, corneal ulceration. That is because all these functions, the normal functions compromise. Strabismus, a condition in which eyes do not look properly. What is strabismus? What is strabismus? You cannot focus at one point. Both the eyes will be at different directions. Okay, that is one sign of congenital facial palsy. Guillain-Barré syndrome, it was first described by Jean Landry. It is discovered by Jean Barry and George Guillain. That's why they combine the two names together. That's Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's an inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy that is affecting the peripheral nerves, including the 7th nerve, that is our facial nerve, causing facial palsy. It is treated by intravenous immunoglobulin and plasma exchange. Transient facial paralysis. This is commonly seen in, I'll say 70% of the patient experiences transient facial paralysis that is encountered by giving an inferior alveolar nerve block. If you go to a dentist for extraction of some teeth, what happens? He gives you a block. If it is a lower molar tooth, he gives you an inferior alveolar nerve block. Inferior alveolar nerve block, that's called as IANB. Okay. During injection while depositing LA, accidentally the needle goes posteriorly, and if it reaches the parotid gland and if the doctor accidentally injects that into the sheath of the parotid gland, what happens is that this LA gets deposited on your terminal branches of the facial nerve, which causes transient facial paralysis. Okay, this beams off within 3 to 5 hours. Only thing to be taken care of in transient facial paralysis is the patient will find it difficult to close his eyes, so there's a need to give a eye patch, so that the patient will not keep his eyes open for a long period, which causes some corneal ulceration or some injury to the cornea, etc. that can be prevented by giving an eye patch. See, this is transient facial paralysis. This the patient recovers by himself after a period of 3 to 5 hours after the effect of LA is being, this will get corrected. So by this we come to the end of facial nerve. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you all get an overall idea of what facial nerve is and how it affects?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I actually got a doubt as a message. Can you kindly repeat the cause and branches of facial nerve once more.
Pardon?
Can you repeat the course and branches of facial nerve once more?
Yeah. The student, first thing you need to keep in mind is, as I told you, you will find it difficult to understand this. So few things need to be marked up. You understand? Like functional components, nucleus, all these need to be marked up. And these nerves, I'll just give you a general idea of the branches and nerves. But with this 1 hour or 2 hour section, I cannot assure you that each and every one of you will be thorough with this. There are a lot of limitations being a first year student. Okay, so please keep that in mind while attending this. Just keep this as a base. Please go back, take your textbook, read it, and correlate your textbook with the skull. Okay, then only this concept will be clear to you all. See, I'll just simplify and tell you. You have two roots, motor root and the sensory root. Okay. This facial nerve, imagine that this facial nerve comes with a groove from the lower border of the pons. Okay. There you have eighth cranial nerve along with the facial nerve. Then you have, they reach the internal acoustic meatus. Okay. These come and reach the internal acoustic meatus. There you have the sensory root intervening, and now they are accompanied by the labyrinthine vessels. So they are traveling as a group. There are 7, 8 labyrinthine vessels. They are traveling as a group. Okay. At some particular point, you can see that you have the motor root and the sensory root. They both fuse to form a single root. Okay. Here, is it clear?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What happens is, here within the canal you have pores within the canal as it exits from the stylomastoid foramen and the terminal branches. These are the branches and its distribution of the facial nerve. Within the facial canal you have the greater petrosal nerve, nerve to stapedius and the cauda tympani. At the exit of the stylomastoid foramen you have the posterior auricular digastric and the stylohyoid. And you have 5 terminal branches: temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and the cervical. Okay, have a look at the figure. From here, they come as a group. They come out of the internal acoustic meatus. You get greater petrosal, cauda tympani, and nerve to stapedius. Okay. Again, from here, what happens as it exits from the stylomastoid foramen? Come to this figure. It exits from the stylomastoid foramen. It gives 3 branches, that is posterior auricular, digastric, and nerve to styloid. Keep this figure in mind. Within the canal, it gives branches to greater petrosal, nerve to stapedius, and cauda tympani. As it exits from the stylomastoid foramen, see here you can see a small ring. Is this visible to you all? A small ring in this figure where I am moving my cursor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is supposed to be your stylomastoid foramen. As the nerve exits out of the stylomastoid foramen, you get 3 more branches, that is posterior auricular, nerve to digastric, and nerve to stylohyoid. Again, what happens? You will get the terminal branches of that, 5 terminal branches, that is temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and cervical. This is the simplified form of your facial nerve. Hope the doubt is clear.
Yes, ma'am. You can continue with trigeminal now.
Trigeminal nerve. Again, this is another major nerve of your face. So trigeminal nerve, it's divided into 3. Keep the basic concepts. It's a very basic, these are the very basic topics to be discussed. And being a first year, you have limitations. I know that. I'm trying to explain in a very basic level, and if you have any doubts, please intervene in between and ask me, okay? Trigeminal nerve is divided into three branches. You have the ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular. As the name indicates, ophthalmic obviously in the ophthalmic region, maxillary along the maxillary bone, and mandibular along the mandibular bone. These are the divisions of trigeminal nerve: ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular. You name it as V1, V2, V3. V1 is ophthalmic nerve, V2 is maxillary nerve, and V3 is mandibular nerve. Okay, ophthalmic related to eye. You have some nerves, branches, something and all associated with your eye and associated structures. Maxillary nerve, you have some structures associated, some nerves, branches, etc. associated with your maxillary part. Mandibular nerve, again you have some structures associated with the mandible. Okay, these are the divisions of the trigeminal nerve. Have a look at the figure. Here you get, see this, 1, 2, 3. You can see here the writings here. 1 is ophthalmic division, 2 is the maxillary division, and 3 is the mandibular division. First, let's start. I'll give you a summary of this. You start from this third one. Here you get the lingual nerve and the inferior alveolar nerve. Okay, keep it there. Here you have the maxillary artery. Maxillary nerve. Maxillary nerve is coming out through the infraorbital foramen. Always, while learning anatomy, keep skull beside you. Open your Netter's atlas and then correlate both. Then only this concept will be clear to you all. See, this maxillary nerve comes out through the infraorbital foramen. You can see, just see here, you have the infraorbital foramen immediately below the lower rim. Infraorbital, again, this is divided into palpebral, nasal, and labial branches. Here you can see the branching of the nerve. Here you can see that is supplying the teeth. Okay, so you can see that is supplying the teeth. Here you get the ophthalmic branch, ophthalmic dealing with eye. You get the lacrimal nerve here. Okay, the nerve is going in the superior part, ophthalmic part. Okay, keep these in mind. Next, ophthalmic. Among the three, ophthalmic nerve, it's the smallest division, and you have the sensory only here. It supplies the eyeball, conjunctiva, lacrimal gland, mucosa of the nose, paranasal sinus, skin of the forehead, eyelid, and the nose. Okay, ophthalmic nerve, it's the smallest division. You get only sensory there. It supplies the eyeball, conjunctiva, lacrimal gland, mucosa of the nose, paranasal sinus, skin of the forehead, eyelid, and the nose. Pose, as already told you, you need to mug up all this. Okay, it will take time for you all to understand what each one is and the course. Okay, so kindly keep your textbook, correlate with the skull, open your Netter's atlas, understand which all parts, where all you get this ganglion, where is this ganglion, on which bone it is placed, where, what are structures associated, and then correlate. There are a lot of limitations for this 2-hour class, so please correlate. Try reading once, and if you have any doubts, please get back to me. Okay, so don't worry if you all are not able to understand the course. Okay, it emerges from the trigeminal ganglion. It passes along the lateral volus cavernous sinus. 3 branches, you can get 3 branches of this in the anterior part of cavernous sinus. It enters the superior orbital fissure. When I tell you superior orbital fissure, you should be able to understand which is the superior orbital fissure, which is that part. You all know where the superior orbital fissure is? Do you all know? Ritika? Deepika?
No, ma'am.
I can't hear you. Do you understand where the superior orbital fissure is?
Ma'am, no, ma'am.
Deepika?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do you know where
Hello?
the superior orbital fissure is?
Hello,
Am I audible to you?
ma'am.
Deepika, am I audible?
Hello.
Hello, Deepika.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where the superior orbital fissure is?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So listen. You can mute your. See, the superior orbital fissure have just keep the term in mind. Superior orbital fissure that comes if you open the skull, you can see a opening in this part of the skull. That is the superior. This is superior orbital related to the orbit. You can see a fissure there. That is called as superior orbital fissure. You have a lot of nerves and vessels coming out through the superior orbital fissure. Then it enters the orbit. Okay, it enters the orbit. There it divides into three branches, that is lacrimal, nasociliary and frontal branches. That is the three divisions of the ophthalmic nerve. Ophthalmic nerve, it emerges from the trigeminal ganglion, which passes through the lateral wall of cavernous sinus, and then you have three branches in the anterior part of cavernous sinus. It enters into the superior orbital fissure. From there, it exits into the orbit, and from the orbit, there it divides into three branches: lacrimal, that is supplies your lacrimal gland and structures associated with that; nasociliary, and then frontal branch. Okay. Lacrimal nerve, it's the smallest. It passes into the orbit through the lateral compartment of the superior orbital fissure outside the tendinous ring. It receives communicating branch from the trochlear nerve also. It's one of the branch of the ophthalmic division. It receives branches of the zygomatico-temporal nerve and branch of maxillary nerve. It gives sensory fibers to the lateral conjunctiva, upper lid, lacrimal gland. Postsynaptic parasympathetic fibers from the pterygopalatine ganglion to the lacrimal gland are also supplied by the ophthalmic division, that is parasympathetic secretomotor fibers. You have secretions there. Lacrimal gland have a secretory function, that is why it is called as parasympathetic secretomotor. Okay. So here you get an overall idea. You can see the muscles attached here. Then you can see the trochlear nerve. There's lacrimal gland, lacrimal nerve, frontal nerve, and nasociliary. Three of them come under branch of the ophthalmic division. Then you have the abducent, inferior division of oculomotor, superior division of oculomotor. Both are associated with eyes. We have lacrimal gland, lacrimal nerve, frontal nerve, and the nasociliary nerve that is associated with the branches of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Frontal nerve, it's largest. It enters the orbit through the lateral part of superior orbital fissure outside the tendinous ring, passes forward between the roof of the orbit and levator palpebrae superioris. It divides into supratrochlear and supraorbital nerves. See the division here. Ophthalmic area, lacrimal, nasal, nasociliary, lacrimal, nasociliary, and here it divides into two. See, this part divides into supratrochlear and supraorbital. Okay. Here you have the infratrochlear, here nasal nerves, and here you have the infraorbital. Supraorbital, infraorbital, supratrochlear, infratrochlear. Okay. Supratrochlear and supraorbital, the difference is supratrochlear is a small nerve. It's a medial branch. It receives communication from branches of infratrochlear nerve. It curves around the supromedial branch of the orbit. Supromedial margin of the orbit. Supraorbital nerve is a larger nerve when compared to the supratrochlear. It's basically a comparison. Supratrochlear, when you compare with the supratrochlear, supraorbital is a larger nerve. It gives a lateral branch. It passes through a supraorbital notch. It divides into medial and lateral branches. See? These are temporal branches of the facial nerve. You have the frontalis muscle here, supraorbital, supratrochlear. This is procerus muscle, okay? Corrugator supercilium. Okay, all these are muscles, and this is the arrangement of the nerves. Nasociliary, it's purely sensory. It passes through the middle part of the superior orbital fissure with a tendinous ring. It runs along the medial wall of the orbit between the superior oblique and medial rectus muscle. It divides into anterior ethmoidal, external nasal, and it has 5 branches in the orbit. Okay, it divides. This main branches again divides and supplies each and every minor part. So nasociliary specialty about nasociliary is it's purely sensory. There is no muscular supply for this nasociliary nerve. Anterior ethmoidal nerve, it's a large terminal branch, houses its course, anterior ethmoidal foramen and canal, then it enters into the anterior cranial fossa on the superior surface of the cribriform plate, then through a slit lateral to the crista galli, it enters into the nasal cavity. There it divides into 2 branches, medial internal nasal branch, and it supplies the anterior nasal septum. Next one is supplies the anterior nasal septum, supplies the anterior part of lateral nasal cavity. It emerges as the external nasal nerve through scienopala and vestibule. Okay, these are the divisions. Okay, how this anterior ethmoidal nerve supplies and it reaches the final portion. These codes need to be by hearted. Coming to the maxillary nerve. As the nerve name indicates, is maxillary nerve. It supplies the maxillary area. Okay. It's the second division of the trigeminal nerve. It's purely sensory. It supplies the derivatives of the maxillary process and the frontonasal process. Frontonasal, that is this area, frontonasal process and the maxillary process that has been supplied by the second division of the trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal ganglion, it's in the middle cranial fossa. It passes to the lateral wall of cavernous sinus. It enters the foramen rotundum. It comes out through it joins the pterygopalatine fossa. There you can see a groove in the posterior surface of the maxilla. Again, through the infraorbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, that is an opening seen in the inferior portion. And earlier we told that you have the superior orbital fissure. Same way you have the inferior orbital fissure. It comes out through the inferior orbital fissure into the orbit as infraorbital nerve. Okay, through the infraorbital foramen, through the face, it comes out through the infraorbital nerve. It comes out as the infraorbital nerve. After leaving foramen rotundum, it moves anteriorly in the uppermost part of the pterygopalatine fossa. As it passes through the pterygopalatine fossa, it also gives branches to the sphenopalatine ganglion. Sphenopalatine ganglion, posterior superior alveolar nerve, and the zygomatic branches. It then moves laterally and moves into a groove on the posterior surface of the maxilla. Then it enters the orbit through the infraorbital fissure and moves through the infraorbital groove. There it is called as infraorbital nerve. That is seen immediately below the lower rim. Below the rim, you can see the infraorbital foramen. Through that, it comes out as the infraorbital nerve and emerges on the face from the infraorbital foramen. See this maxillary nerve. This is the trigeminal ganglion. From there, you get the second division of the B2, that is maxillary nerve, that comes out through the foramen rotundum. It is coming out. Here, you get the infraorbital foramen. From that, it comes as the infraorbital nerve. It gives 3 branches, palpebral, nasal, and superior labial branches. Again, from here, it divides and gives the superior alveolar branches, that is to the teeth, okay, teeth and gingiva. Then from here, the main trunk branch goes like this, okay. The zygomatic nerve, it's a part of facial nerve, okay. Zygomatic branch is a part of facial nerve. So again, here you get the divisions. There is cross-linking and communication between each linking. So each and the associated nerves, okay. Here again, you can see the division. This is the nasopalatine nerve. Then you get the greater palatine nerve. This goes to the hard palate. Then lesser palatine nerve that goes to the soft palate. And you have the nasopharyngeal branch going into the nasopharynx. This gives a summary of the maxillary nerve. From the trigeminal ganglion, maxillary nerve comes out through the foramen rotundum. Its main branch comes out through the infraorbital foramen as an infraorbital nerve. It divides into 3 palpebral, nasal, and superior labial branches. Again, here you have the sublutions going through the superior alveolar. See, all these are connected together. That supplies the teeth and gingiva, that is maxillary area. Again, from here you have the branches, nasopalatine branch that gives to the incisive foramen. You get the greater palatine nerve coming out through the greater palatine foramen. That supplies the hard palate. You get the lesser palatine nerve coming out here through the palatine foramen, supplying the soft palate. Here you get the pharyngeal branch, which supplies the nasopharynx. This is another schematic diagram showing the branches of the V2. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
In the middle cranial fossa, meningeal branch, it travels along the middle meningeal artery and provides sensory innervation to the cranial dura mater. See here, a branch is going to the dura. Okay. In the pterygopalatine fossa, you have ganglionic branches that arise as two trunks. These trunks join to form a single root within the pterygopalatine ganglion. It gives orbital branches, palatine branches, pharyngeal branches, nasal branches. They give post-ganglionic secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal gland via zygomatic-temporal and lacrimal branches. That is already explained. Orbital branches, they supply the periosteum of the orbit. Then you have the nasal branches. They supply the mucosa of the superior and inferior concave, posterior nodal sinus, posterior portion of the nasal septum, which also includes the nasopalatine branch. It passes across the roof of the nasal cavity, downward and forward, lying between the mucosa and periosteum of the nasal septum. That is the path supplied by the nasal branch. Okay. Reaching the floor of the nasal cavity, it gives branches to the anterior part of nasal septum and floor of the nasal cavity. It enters the incisive canal and it enters the oral cavity through the incisive foramen. It provides sensation to the palatal mucosa of the premaxillary region, that is the anterior maxillary region. We have already discussed this with nose and paranasal sinus. Okay, so I'm not repeating this. This is already discussed. Palatine branch, it arises as greater palatine and lesser palatine. So greater palatine supplies the hard palate and lesser palatine supplies the soft palate. Greater palatine nerve descends through the pterygopalatine canal from the ganglion and emerges from the greater palatine foramen of the hard palate. It then moves anteriorly between the mucoperiosteum and hard palate up to the first premolar, supplying the sensory innervation of palatal soft tissue and bone. It then communicates with the nasopalatine. Nasopalatine comes out through the incisive foramen and greater palatine comes out of the posterior region through the greater palatine foramen. Okay, nasopalatine vessels come out through the incisive foramen, that is anteriorly. Greater palatine comes out through the greater palatine foramen, that is a bit posterior, that is parallel to the second molar. Okay. Middle palatine and posterior palatine emerge from the lesser palatine foramen and they supply the soft palate, that is going more posteriorly. They supply the soft palatine area. See this? This foramen is called as incisive foramen. There you can see the emergence of nasopalatine vessels. Then you can see the greater palatine nerves and vessels coming out through the greater palatine foramen. Here you can see the lesser palatine nerves and vessels coming out. This supplies the soft palate, this supplies the hard palate, and this supplies the premaxillary area. Pharyngeal branches, it leaves the posterior part of the pterygopalatine ganglion and passes through the pharyngeal canal. It is distributed to the mucous membrane of the nasal part of pharynx and posterior part of the eustachian tube. Posterior superior alveolar nerve, that is again coming out as a direct branch. Okay, it arises from the main trunk of the maxillary nerve in the pterygopalatine fossa just before the nerve enters the inferior orbital canal. Usually, it arises as two trunks. It passes downward and crosses the pterygopalatine fossa, reaching the infratemporal surface of maxilla. First trunk continues downward on the posterior surface of maxilla and provides sensory innervation to the buccal gingiva in the maxillary molar region adjacent the facial mucosal surface. That is the first part. Second, what happens? Second trunk, it enters the maxilla through the posterior superior alveolar canal to travel to the posterolateral wall of the maxillary sinus, providing sensory innervation to the sinus mucosa. Continuing downward, again when it descends downward, what happens? It provides sensory innervation to the alveoli, periodontal ligament, and the pulp of the molar tooth. Finally, it ends up supplying the pulp of the molars. So in this figure, you can see the pulp of the molar tooth are supplied by the terminal branches. Okay, here you can see the posterior superior, which is one of the main branch of the V2. Okay, which is coming down and it is supplying the tooth here. Then it gives the branches to the greater palatine and incisive. That is here the nasopalatine branches also have been supplied by that particular branch. Zygomatic nerve. It enters the orbit through the infraorbital fissure. Zygomaticofacial nerve and zygomaticotemporal. Zygomaticofacial nerve, it appears on the face of the foramen in the zygomatic bone. It supplies skin on the prominence of the cheek. This area of the cheek is being supplied by the zygomaticofacial. The area, the cheek area supplied by the zygomaticofacial. Temporal means the temporal region. Okay, the temporal region is supplied by the zygomaticotemporal. It appears in the infratemporal region through the foramen in the zygomatic bone. It supplies skin of the temporal region after piercing the temporal fascia 2 cm above the zygoma. It gives communicating branch to the lacrimal nerve, supplying the parasympathetic secretomotor fibers to the lacrimal gland. Okay, they are having secretomotor because the lacrimal nerve has secretory function associated with the lacrimal gland. That is why secretions are carried by the secretomotor fibers. We already discussed this. In the infraorbital canal, you get middle superior alveolar nerves that run along the lateral wall of maxilla. They participate in the superior dental plexus. It supplies the premolars. Then the anterior superior alveolar nerve that runs in a canal in the anterior wall of maxilla. Facial branches, there you have palpebral nerves, nasal branch, and the superior labial nerve. These are the three branches. That is palpebral branch, it gives the orbicularis oculi and the skin of lower eyelid. Nasal branch supplied by lateral wall of nose and middle part of septum. Superior labial nerve, it forms infraorbital plexus. It supplies the skin and mucous membrane of upper lip, cheek, and labial glands. Okay, these are the facial branches. See this? Lateral nasal, superior palpebral, and upper buccal. Okay. Next, last one, mandibular nerve. It's the largest mixed one. Nerve of the first brachialas. Motor root from the motor root nucleus and pons. Sensory root arrives from the Gasserian ganglion. They exit through the foramen ovale in the greater wing of sphenoid. From the trunk, which remains 2 to 3 mm undivided in the infratemporal fossa, it travels between the lateral pterygoid and otic ganglion laterally and tensor palatine medially anterior to the medial meningeal artery. This is the course by which the nerve travels to reach our particular site. It has the smallest anterior division and a large posterior division. Branches compared with ophthalmic and maxillary, you have some more branches for the mandibular. You get an undivided trunk, that is nervus spinosus and nerve to medial pterygoid. Then you get the anterior division. There you have the mesenteric nerve, deep temporal nerve, nerve to lateral pterygoid, and the buccal nerve. Posterior division, you get orbitotemporal nerve, inferior alveolar nerve, and the lingual nerve. These are the divisions. You get the main trunk, anterior division, and posterior division. Trunk, you have two two nerves, that is nervus spinosus and nerve to medial pterygoid. Anterior division, mesenteric nerve, as the name indicates, it supplies the masseter. Then deep temporal region is being supplied by that. Nerve to lateral pterygoid, innervations of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay. Have a look at this figure. you get the divisions. Here you get the inferior alveolar nerve. Okay, this inferior alveolar nerve passes along the inferior alveolar canal to the anterior region of the mandible, and it comes out through the mental foramen. Anteriorly below the premolar area, it comes out through the mental foramen. Then you have the lingual nerve there. Okay, then the auriculotemporal nerve, that is goes superiorly. Okay, auriculotemporal, need to supply the auricular temporal region behind the ear. Okay, these are the divisions, posterior divisions. Okay, branches from the trunk. Before dividing into anterior and posterior division, it gives two branches during its 2 to 3 mm path. Nervus spinosus, or the meningeal branch of mandibular nerve. It re-enters the cranial cavity through foramen spinosum along with the middle meningeal artery. It supplies the dura mater of the middle cranial fossa and mastoid air sinus. Mastoid air sinus are also supplied by this nerve. Nerve to medial pterygoid, it supplies medial pterygoid to the optic ganglion without interruption to tensor tympani and tensor palatini. Anterior division. The anterior division is significantly smaller than the posterior. After dividing from the main trunk, it runs anteriorly and below the lateral pterygoid muscle to over its upper border. After this, the nerve is buccal nerve. After this particular point, it is called as the buccal nerve. It reaches the external surface of the muscle by either passing through the two heads or winding. It shows this figure. This figure shows the relation of the nerve with the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay. Nerve to lateral pterygoid, it enters the deep surface of the muscle. It may arise as an independent branch or may arise in common with the buccal nerve. Masseteric, as already discussed, emerges from the upper border of the lateral pterygoid just in front of the TMJ. It passes laterally through the mandibular notch along with the masseteric vessels and enters the deep surface of masseter. It also supplies the TMJ. TMJ is temporomandibular joint, the joint seen immediately in front of your ears. Okay, the joint that helps in opening and closing your mouth, that is called as temporomandibular joint. Buccal nerve, it's only the sensory branch of anterior division. It travels with the two heads of lateral pterygoid and emerges in the cheek at the anterior border of the masseter. Simplified form, just keep in mind buccal nerve is the sensory branch of the anterior division. It supplies the anterior, it supplies the buccal area. Okay, the cheek area is supplied by the buccal. It also supplies the mucous membrane, that is orally. It supplies the mucous membrane of the cheek also. Deep temporal nerve, they are anterior and posterior deep temporal nerves. It passes between the skull, enters the deep surface of the temporalis muscle. Anterior is often a branch of buccal nerve and posterior may arise in common with the masseteric nerve. Here you can see the relations of the nerve with the lateral pterygoid muscle. You can see the deep nerve, the temporal nerves here. All these nerves are associated or these come along with the vessel also. Just a second. Just a minute. Okay. So you can see the association of this lateral pterygoid muscle with the nerves. Clear? Is this
Yes,
clear?
ma'am.
Now the division of the posterior division, branches of the posterior division, you get auriculotemporal, lingual and the inferior alveolar nerve. Auriculotemporal nerve, which arises from two roots which run backward and encircle the middle meningeal artery and form a single trunk. The trunk passes posterior to the lateral pterygoid between the neck of the mandible and sphenomandibular ligament, superior to the first part of the maxillary artery. There, the thing to be kept in mind is there you have the divisions of the maxillary artery also coming in between. That is, so the boundaries and borders would also be related to the maxillary artery also. It lies behind the TMJ close to the parotid region. Essence behind the superficial temporal vessels, and then what happens is this vessel. Then and then in the temporal region, it divides into superficial temporal branches, auriculotemporal, that goes behind the ear. Okay. This is the part of maxillary artery being shown here. You get the maxillary mandibular nerve is coming here, exiting out of the foramen ovale. You get the lingual nerve, inferior alveolar artery, nerve and artery. Okay. So branches of the auriculotemporal nerve, auricular branches, it supplies the tragus, upper part of auricle, roof of external auditory meatus, antero-posterior part of the tympanic membrane. Superficial temporal branches, they supply the skin of the temple. It also supplies the sensory and secretomotor to the parotid gland. Its articular branches, they also supply the temporomandibular joint. Inferior alveolar nerve, it's a mixed nerve. It runs vertically downward, medial to the lateral pterygoid and latero-posterior to the lingual nerve. It then moves between the sphenomandibular ligament and medial surface of mandibular ramus. Dear students, see, you will find it difficult to understand all this course and part which I am telling you. That is because you are not able to relate what I am telling with the anatomy. Okay, so please go back. I know it's you are finding it very difficult and boring when I'm reading through, because I have nothing else to do other than going through, because you don't know which is the lateral and medial and lateral part of all these muscles which have been explained. Okay, so please keep your textbook, figure, mandible, and then compare. Then only you will be able to understand what I am telling. So just keep this as a base and then please go and read. Okay. Now this inferior alveolar nerve enters the mandible through the mandibular foramen and it runs through the bony canal below the teeth. And that supplies the teeth in the mandible. Have a look at this figure. See, here you get the inferior alveolar nerve and this supplies the lower molar. Okay. Not only the lower molar, all the teeth are being supplied, mandibular teeth are being supplied by the inferior alveolar nerve. Mylohyoid, it arrives just before the nerve enters the mandibular foramen. It pierces the sphenomandibular ligament along with the mylohyoid muscle and runs in the mylohyoid groove. It supplies the mylohyoid muscle and the anterior belly of digastric. It is also sensory to skin on the inferior and anterior surface of the Mendel protuberance. These are the points, anatomical landmarks seen on the mandibular area. Okay. It may provide sensory innervation to the mandibular incisors. There is also evidence that the mylohyoid supply the mesial root of the mandibular first molar. In some cases, when you give anesthesia, there will be, you can see that the patient still complains of pain. In spite of giving an inferior alveolar nerve block, patient still complains of pain when you try to extract the mandibular first molar. That is because of the innervations of the mylohyoid that is causing pain. Then second one is branches of the lower teeth and gums. Then the Mendel nerve. Mendel nerve, it exits through the canal. You have the Mendel foramen below the premolars and it exits out of the canal, canal as Mendel nerve. That's a part of the inferior alveolar nerve actually. Incisive nerve, again it travels forward and it remains within the canal. It forms a plexus, innervates the pulpal tissue of the first premolar canine and it exits through the incisors. It supplies the incisors. That is called as the incisive nerve. See this? It enters, this mandibular nerve enters into the mandibular canal. It comes out here as a below the premolar area. It comes out as a Mendel nerve, and towards the incisors, when supplying the incisors, it is called as a incisive. Lingual, as you all know, the name lingual means related to tongue. It lies anterior to the inferior alveolar and between the lateral pterygoid and tensor palpebral. It receives chorda tympani also. It receives the branch of the chorda tympani also. It emerges from the inferior part of the lateral pterygoid to lie between the ramus and the medial pterygoid in the pterygomandibular space. It moves downward and forward deep to the pterygomandibular raphe between the origin of the superior constrictor and mylohyoid muscle. It reaches the side of the base of the tongue 1 centimeter below and behind the third molar, just below the mucous membrane of the lateral lingual sulcus. That is the floor of the mouth. Okay. It then proceeds anteriorly across the muscle of the tongue, looping medially and downward to the submandibular duct to deep surface of the submandibular gland, where it breaks in the terminal branches. Sensory to the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, along with a special sensation also sensory to the floor of the mouth and gingiva on the lingual side of the mandible, are supplied by the lingual branch of the trigeminal nerve. Okay. Branches of the lingual nerve are cauda tympani, communication with the submandibular ganglion, and the hypoglossal nerve. Ganglia associated with the trigeminal nerve are ciliary ganglion, pterygopalatine ganglion, otic ganglion, and submandibular ganglion. Just keep the names in mind: ciliary ganglion, pterygopalatine ganglion, otic ganglion, and submandibular ganglion. These are the ganglion associated with the trigeminal nerve. Applied anatomy: trigeminal neuralgia, that is, it is otherwise called as tic doulournex. It is a sudden, usually unilateral, severe, brief, stabbing, lancinating, recurring pain in the distribution of one or more branches of the fifth nerve, that is the trigeminal nerve. That is called as trigeminal neuralgia. It is commonly seen disorder. It is usually unilateral. You have pressure points. Okay, patient has pain only in those areas supplied by this trigeminal nerve. Only the area supplied. If it is ophthalmic division, patient has pain only in that particular area. Or if it is a mandibular nerve, only in that particular area supplied by the nerve. Trigeminal neuropathy, sensory loss of phase or weakness of the jaw muscles. It causes Jogren syndrome. Causes of this trigeminal neuropathy may be Jogren syndrome, herpes zoster, leprosy, meningioma, or schwannoma. Herpes zoster ophthalmicus, as the name indicates, related with eye, recurrent neurocutaneous infection of inferior ophthalmic division of the trigeminal dermatome, most frequently affecting the nasociliary branch. It is caused by varicella zoster. This is the case of herpes zoster ophthalmicus. See, the only area supplied by the that is inferior ophthalmic division is affected. Okay, by this we come to the end of trigeminal nerve also.
I think, ma'am, asking a doubt for this session will be tough for them also, as they don't have a skull bone with them, and they have not seen dissection of facial muscles too.
See, actually, this topic will be really difficult for them because they don't know what we are talking about. That is, we are associating this particular nerve with a muscle nearby or some other artery nearby, okay, or some other surface. So they'll find it very difficult to associate. So it is, I don't think they'll be able to follow the course of these nerves.
So it is advisable that they have to keep this class as a base, and when they are coming back to college, they'll be able to do it, I think.
Yeah, only that will be possible. They can just keep this as a base. If at least by today's class, if you are able to recollect some names of some nerves, then I would say that this class was beneficial for you.
Yeah, that definitely would have happened already.
Yeah.
So is there any doubt?
Yeah, please ask me if you have any doubt. I know it is you. I don't.
Yeah,
think...
ma'am. Actually, I got a message.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you give a summary on the branches of trigeminal nerve as a summary?
Okay. So this trigeminal nerve, I told you, it's divided. The main trunk is divided into three. Okay, V1, V2, V3. Okay, so this V1 is called as ophthalmic division. V2 is called as maxillary division, and V3 is called as mandibular division. Okay, hope that much is clear. Trigeminal nerve is divided into three: ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular division. When going into the ophthalmic division, that has three main divisions. Okay, the ophthalmic division, if possible, take your note and just write a main heading like trigeminal nerve. Put three arrow marks. Write it as ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular as a flow chart. Okay. Under this ophthalmic division, you have three branches: lacrimal nerve, frontal, and nasociliary. Ophthalmic is over. Clear?
Ma'am, can
Yeah.
you repeat the branches of the ophthalmic nerve?
Deepika, I can't hear you.
Ma'am, can you explain the ophthalmic branches, ophthalmic nerves ki branches, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm telling about the branches of the trigeminal nerve. You take a notebook. First, write trigeminal nerve on top. You give three divisions for that, three main divisions for that. Okay, write it as a flow chart. You get ophthalmic division, maxillary division, and the mandibular division. Okay. Under ophthalmic division, you have three main branches, that is lacrimal, frontal, and nasociliary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
finished. Okay,
yes, ma'am.
next you are going into the maxillary division. Okay, maxillary division, you have ganglionic branches, orbital branch, nasal branch. Okay, are you writing it down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Under maxillary, write it down as ganglionic, orbital, nasal, palatine branches, pharyngeal branches. 5 divisions. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Under mandibular division, okay, you have 3 divisions under mandible, that is trunk, anterior division, and the posterior division. Under trunk, you have 2 nervus spinosus and nerve to medial pterygoid. Under anterior division, you have multitric, deep temporal, nerve to lateral pterygoid, and buccal nerve. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Posterior division, you have auricular, inferior alveolar, and the lingual.
Yes, ma'am.
1 second, let me see if I have any figure to explain all this in just a second. See, just a second. Maxillary nerve, you get, see these branches: infraorbital nerve, zygomatic nerve, nasopalatine nerve, lesser palatine nerve, pharyngeal branch, and the greater palatine. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This infraorbital again gives 3 branches. We are talking about B2 maxillary nerve, palpebral, nasal, and superior labial. Clear? Only the main division, maxillary nerve, divides into zygomatic nerve, infraorbital nerve, nasopalatine nerve, greater palatine nerve, lesser palatine nerve, and the pharyngeal branch. Okay. Under that, infraorbital
Yes,
again you
ma'am.
have 3 divisions, that is palpebral, nasal, and superior labial. Okay. All these terms will help you to identify the area they supply. The areas innervated. These terms will help you to identify the areas they are innervated. Is this V2 clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, going into V3, that is mandibular nerve, this table. Okay. Branches, you have a trunk, you get a trunk, anterior division and posterior division, and subdivisions for this are mentioned below this table. Just click a picture of this table.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the overall summary of the trigeminal nerve.
Yes, ma'am.
You need to by heart the nucleus, ganglions. Trigeminal nerve is associated with so many ganglion, and you need to know what ganglion is, what is the function of a ganglion, how do they relay, how do they get the signals. All these need to be kept in mind to understand the full trigeminal nerve. As your first year, there are a lot of limitations for you all to understand. So at least if you could get what are the branches.
One question came, ma'am. During extraction of tooth, for which nerve LA is being administered?
That is, you divide your tooth, upper and lower arches into 4. Okay. Suppose you want to extract the anterior tooth. You want to anesthetize the buccal branches buccally, and you need to anesthetize the palatine, that is premaxillary area nasopalatine branches palatally to extract canine to canine. Okay, if when it comes to premolars, then you need to give a greater palatine nerve block, which is again a branch of greater palatine need to be anesthetized, which is again a branch of maxillary nerve. Okay, there you get the middle superior alveolar and the posterior superior alveolar that we have already discussed. That is again a branch of maxillary nerve. Okay, when it comes to mandible, the mandibular division, the inferior alveolar nerve and the lingual nerve of the mandibular nerve. Okay, the inferior alveolar branch and the lingual branch of the posterior division of the mandibular nerve needs to be anesthetized to extract a tooth in the mandible. So each tooth requires separate nerve blocks. Is it clear?
I hope the doubt is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any further questions? I hope they don't have any queries.
Okay,
So
if you have any queries, please do ask. Later also, if you have any queries, please send a mail, okay?
yeah, I'll share your mail ID with them
Sure, sure.
so that they can have a direct contact with you. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending 2 classes with us and supporting this webinar series. On behalf of Department of Anatomy and also Shiva Ayurvedic Medical College, we are so thankful to you, and I hope you had great time with us also.
Yes. Thanks a lot for
Okay, ma'am.
calling me to take this lecture. I don't know how informative was my class, but still, please do keep in touch, and if you have any queries, please do ask.
Yeah, of course, the class was informative, and the slides were also very simple, and it was good, and I hope students followed your classes also.
Thank you.
So thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. So with your permission, I'm winding up the session.
Thank you so much.